Vincent, thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here, Carlo. It's a big honor.
I'm extremely intrigued by what you do because when I first got to know you, and I realized that not only you are an artist and a very accomplished one, you are a concert pianist and you play all over the world, but you also work as an entrepreneur in the luxury business, as an entrepreneur in the music and in the luxury business. So it's this intersection between art and luxury that has truly intrigued me. And that's why we started our conversation. And I have you here today on the show. So welcome.
Thank you, Carlo. It's likewise. You've inspired me a lot, especially listening to some of your podcasts. And I think I discovered you through LinkedIn, and I was like, wow, this is someone who really shines a new light on luxury industry. It's something that I always wanted to maybe be part of in conversation. And I love the fact that you were responding so quickly to my message there, and invited me to be here. So I hope that today we can look at a new side of the luxury industry. And then
And in fact, this is really what I aim to do here at Lux and Friends, to enlarge the public discourse where luxury, lifestyle, well-being are now linked to many other topics, many other things that are transforming and changing our universe. But let's start with a brief history of your career. Where do you come from? How you started as a musician, as an artist, and how has it developed over something else?
I was born in Holland and did my musical studies at the Royal Conservatoire of Music. And I was there from a very young age, where I started the Young Talent Department, as they call it now, at age 12. So I was accepted, which was a big journey towards that. And after that, I did my Bachelor of Music. So it was 6 years of, preschool. I have to say secondary school, not preschool, but practicing piano during preschool, and then secondary school doing that entirely at the Conservatoire of Music. And then also doing a Bachelor of Music there. So it was a 12-year long journey before I started doing my master's in London at the Royal Academy of Music. And there, my affinity and love for luxury came about by seeing a advertisement by Harrods on the billboard in the Royal Academy of Music, which was, filled with, are you looking for a room, and are you looking for lessons? And all of a sudden there was a message there with a big logo that said Harrods, which I'm sure many people know as the incredible luxury department store in London. And it said, if you're looking for a part-time job in the Harrods piano department, please call this number. And I've always kept that ad instead of just writing the number down, because phones weren't really a huge thing back then, and camera phones didn't really exist. So I ripped it off the billboard and took it home and phoned the number, and they said, oh, you can come for an interview if you'd like. And I set in for an interview and entered this beautiful luxury department store, and started in December 2004, just after Christmas, actually, between Christmas and New Year. I started my first day in Harrods, and they accepted me, and it was that first day where I sold 3 pianos, just from the pure feeling of enthusiasm and love and passion for product. And this was really what my interview was about. Like, do you know anything about luxury? And I was like, well, I think luxury is all about communication. And I've played in orchestras where you work with people as a team, and love the piano. And for me, it's about kind of conveying a message of storytelling and love for music. And that's what happened. So that was how I got in touch with the luxury industry. And from there on, from the UK onwards, I moved to Switzerland to work for Steinway Sons. I started my own piano showroom in Switzerland as an entrepreneur. and was a director for Steinway and Sons in the Middle East in Qatar for 5 years as well, bringing me back to Switzerland. Having started my own actually showroom here for the world's finest sound system, which is Steinway Lindorf, the beautiful speakers that you see here. And I'm also a Steinway artist, so I write music for luxury brands all around the world. So this is how kind of the music and the luxury industry came together.
Let me
in my life.
let me start with a question that popped up in my mind as you were speaking. The creativity you have nurtured all your life as an artist, but what part does it play in your life as a businessman? Are those two separate things, or do you feel they merge? Creativity
Yeah, I think
and
they
business.
merge. It's a good question. I think they merge entirely into what I feel is my artistic personality. I feel you have that artistic personality as well, as where you connect at a very dynamic level. And I think the creativity is completely intertwined into the business, because I personally believe you can truly only be successful in business and selling a product if you truly believe in it, and if you're artistically feel related to that product. Yeah.
You also write music for luxury brands. What does it mean? Why do luxury brands need their own music to communicate? And what do you try to achieve when you write this music for them?
It's it's such a wonderful thing to do. I realized not only that luxury brands need music, very often they use the wrong music. So it's to the sense of where they are very scattered when it comes to their musical identity. And it's very interesting if you, for instance, look at a luxury brand like Swarovski, for instance, is a very good example. I've been in touch with them for a while. I haven't been writing any music until right now, but you see that they have a very cohesive brand message, and they have so many different angles of their business as well, whether it's the movies, whether it's the Swarovski elements, whether it's like their collections that people collect. It's such an interesting company, and when you see their videos, you see that they're often accompanied by incredible diverse type of music, and sometimes also music that is quite fitting, and sometimes music that is also maybe a bit cliche in the senses that, oh, you experience this whole kind of a tingy sound for crystals, and that's why the track needs to be like this. But they have lots of varied type of music, and I feel that a lot of luxury brands, they work with production companies, and the production companies very often have a music supervisor, and they select random music from random libraries, and depending also on the scope of the project and the value of the project, but also then the budget, the music gets chosen. And very often kind of poor decisions are being made when it comes to music, because it simply doesn't really fit. And as a composer, one can truly offer a journey, a musical journey with a brand, and say, what is it, the music that you're looking for? What is the type of audience you have? What is your target? What would you like to achieve with this music? And as a composer, you can then also say, well, we can adapt the music, which obviously has stock music, it's library music, music that's fixed. It's impossible to come with an adaptation, but it's also impossible to say, well, we're going to make a second version of this. And as a composer, you can create multiple versions of the music. So you can say, well, you have a department in the United States, you have a department in Southeast Asia, you have a department in Australia, you have a European department, and you can create different variations. Let's say you have a department in India. You would like to create an adaptation and use local instrumentation that would be more tailored towards your audience there. And you can have the same track, but different instrumentation. So it's fun. It's a real journey. Once luxury brands recognize your ability to be flexible and to take them on the journey, it's it they do find out that it's something that they need because it really underlines their brand message. It really speaks as a cohesive whole, and it truly fits the images that they're trying to, and the message that they're trying to portray.
How do you know, though, you have met the target? What I mean is, we live in a very visual world today. So it's much easier to reckon whether a visual campaign has met a target of telling a story, of representing a brand image, because it's a visual journey. When it comes to an auditory journey, how do you know that the music, which comes without words, is actually telling the story that the brand is trying to tell? Isn't it subjective?
Music has such a different effect on different people. So very often, I speak with film composers and they have conversations with people in the plane. And people are asking them like, you know, what music have you been creating? And then they tell the film. And then very often the person says, but is there any music on this film? And as a composer, very often people wonder whether there is music to something, you have done the right job. So sometimes the music should not be noticed. The music should be part of an emotional experience, even though the person very often wouldn't even know what music is there. And this is a really interesting subject that, you know, if I say Mission Impossible, you can hear the sound in your own mind. If I tell you James Bond, you know the theme song because it's repeated so much. But probably if I ask you your favorite TV series on Netflix and what music are they often playing, you probably wouldn't know because it's part of the musical and emotional experience that is not so conscious but more subconscious. So music can be both. Now, how to measure the effect of this is probably to try and find out what emotional and storytelling effect images do have, because I do feel as a musician that film is our greatest friend. And without film and without visuals, it would be a lot harder for us film composers and for us musicians to be heard. And yeah, that's how I feel. I think film composers are the new classical composers.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree with you. Now, you mentioned before, and I'm very pleased about it, the fact that I speak somehow musically or artistically. And in fact, I'm a musician myself, although very humbled in your presence because I'm much less accomplished than you are. But uh, in the early stage of my life, I was very dedicated to music. I play guitar, I sing, I'm a trained opera singer, and I must say I have consecrated many hours as a child and as a young man to music. To the point that when I realized, it was also my first job, but when I realized that I would have rather moved to a different career, for some times I felt some sort of a sellout. I mean, as an artist or as somebody who wanted to be an artist, the very idea of having to sell something to somebody or to be involved in a commercial thing was kind of negative for me. So, when you moved from being an acclaimed concert pianist to actually selling Steinway and Sons, which are the Rolls-Royce of pianos, to wealthy people who may not even be able to play those pianos. How did it feel at the beginning?
Yeah, I think everything is part of a journey of consciousness and realization what works and what doesn't work. And I think the music industry is changing so radically from the times that you and I were both young. Um, the music industry was actually very simple. It was explained to me that if I wanted to be a successful concert pianist, all I had to do was practice really hard and try to create some good recordings and win piano competitions. And through that, I could be an accomplished concert pianist. And until the invention of high-speed internet, you know, the industry as we know, the music industry as we know it, has radically changed. People went from buying records to downloading them, and this shift I was very, very aware of. Around 2002, 2003, 2004, we see kind of the rise of the internet music piracy, and the streaming was finally the answer to people pirating music and downloading it online, because people thought, okay, well, if we can download music very, very quickly now with ADSL, after the disappearance of the dial-up internet connection, people thought it was much easier to obtain music directly online. And this radical shift made me realize that the commercial value of recording music was vanished, something that existed for over 100 years. We're looking at 1903, we're looking at the first recordings of Jeu d'eau from Maurice Ravel. Until now, we're looking at an industry that was identical for 100 years and suddenly went through this radical shift of where artists had to find new ways to earn a living. And I realized also from labels that who I approached that they were serious about only releasing new music rather than old music, because they realized whenever they would adapt, a new pianist was playing Chopin, that, you know, record sales would go down, and from previous recordings, and then go up from new recordings, but finally there was no new money to be made. So there was extra costs in recording, and I started my own ensemble in London, which is called the London Steve Reich Ensemble. We started doing concerts, and I found out that being purely artistic is a really expensive thing in the music industry. And I had to pay for my own rehearsal times, and I had to pay my musicians, and I had to pay, you know, even concert halls, and I needed to pay recording engineers, and I needed to advance, you know, because record labels were like, well, we're no longer selling CDs, so if you want to make a CD for us, you're going to have to pay for it. And I also noticed that advances that were advanced by the record label were never recouped because people stopped buying CDs. And then I thought by myself, well, I see also festival winners, like piano competition winners that weren't really having a career. And my biggest change was, I was in London. I was asked by a wonderful piano teacher and pianist called Peter Voigtwanger to have a lesson with him and attend one of his students' concerts, to which I arrived in a very, very small London building on a very, very old Yamaha grand piano, heard these two concert pianists that were giving this shared concert. And me approaching them after, I said, listen, you're such an incredible concert pianist, but there's 4 people sitting in the audience, and you know, and we're in a small school building. And they told me, so Vincent, yeah, this is my reality. And they were just fresh graduates from the Royal Academy of Music. So I was looking up to them massively because I just started my master. And I was shocked. I was shocked to see that this is going to be my future. My future after I graduate is this image in this old school building, on this old piano, for 4 people audience. And I asked about their career, and they said, I'm doing some chamber music and I'm playing some churches in London. And I said, I don't want to do this. I have to find new ways. I have to find new ways to do new things. And this is when I started my own ensemble. This is when I joined Harrods. And this is when I found out I needed to start writing music. So I created an adaptation of a piece of Steve Reich, which was called 6 Pianos. And I created an arrangement of this because I thought it's much better as a solo pianist to play this work of 6 pianos, because it's a logistical nightmare to have 6 pianos on stage. And I called Steve Reich, who I knew really well, and he said, go for it, and we'll name it Piano Counterpoint. And this piece was finally sent in to the Grammy Awards by EMI at that time, which was an incredible incredible thing. And I realized it was like, okay, if you do new things and you create your own music, there's so much more recognition of what it is you do. And if, as a classical musician, you only focus on your inner abilities, and you focus on the art form, and you focus on this incredible, authentic journey, there's nobody calling you, and the phone will not ring, because people don't care about inner abilities; they care about product. And I thought it's the same with doctors. Like you can study for 30 years as a doctor, and finally people will only pay you for the people you cure. And you can study the luxury industry for 3 decades, but there's no one going to pay you. Once you deliver a product, this is when people will respond. And I think musicians forget this. They forget that their career is not about their inner abilities and their virtuoso. It's really about the product they bring.
If you had the opportunity to meet your 20 years old self,
Yeah.
what would you tell him?
It's funny, I had this question before, and I would probably just tell myself to keep going and say nothing else. Because I think everything is there meant to be as a reason, and all the hardships are exactly there to push you into new directions. And I feel personally that I was faced by a lot of hardship in my life. And I feel that the people who I meet in my life who are very successful have similar stories. So I feel if I would have said something to make it easier, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'd say just keep going and listen to everything that's surrounding you. And I think also as classical musicians, we lock ourselves up, right? We are in small practice rooms for many, many, many hours a day. The Royal Academy of Music, I had days that I was practicing 14 hours a day. And being a social person often for a classical musician is a difficult thing to do. And very often people tell me classical musicians are very arrogant and very difficult to work with. And I'm like, yes, because they've never really had a social life, and they've never really learned to look around. So I think in that regard, I'm fortunate to have a mother who pushed me out there. And probably my job in Harrods was the most important thing for my career, my piano career, even though the people at the Royal Academy of Music will be frowning because it's like, why is he working when he can be practicing? And I don't think people realize the importance of actually going out there as a musician, seeing the world. So musicians these days, I tell them, as I do a lot of career coaching sessions for musicians around the world, I say, open the newspaper, know what's there. Don't just look at your phone and social media, but get a job, like get a real job, not a musical job and not a teaching job, but get a real job and find out what other people talk about and how they communicate. And that's so important. And if you don't get these experiences from a young age onwards, you're lost. And I see that with many of my friends who are unbelievably great musicians, but struggle to get 200 euros for a concert, like a couple of times a year.
Oof, that's hard. This also reminds me of a quote from one of my favorite writers ever, John Fante, who wrote Ask the Dust. He used to say, the job of a writer is not to write, but to live his life. Only then we'll have something to write about.
Yes.
This makes sense.
Yes. Very, very true. It's also what I wonder as a writer, how many books do you need to read to be a good writer? Or can you be a good writer by not reading books? By keeping your mind fresh and actually writing about your experiences.
It may be an option. As a writer, I can tell you that the less books and valuable ones I read, the more I understand them. To read many books, but not thoroughly, is a waste of time. Whereas when you focus on some good ones, they have always something new to tell you.
Yes, yeah, because they really change your way of thinking.
Absolutely.
And they allow you to grow as a thinker.
Vincent, since you sit in a very unique position, as we said before, so your business is at the crossroad between creativity, music, and luxury. What's the state of the art, in your opinion, in terms of creativity of the luxury industry? The luxury industry is very alive. We can see it every day. Brands are becoming larger and larger. They also belong to big conglomerates that have the financial means to communicate widely and openly. However, are they expressing a high level of creativity, in your opinion, or is more marketing and, how can I say, cultural relevance, so to speak, rather than artistry?
The world is filled with digital noise. And I think every brand in the world is facing an incredible change in the industry whereas in the old days, someone in the south of Sri Lanka couldn't have a viral video. And now someone who owns a little car mechanic shop in India can do a little basketball thing with a car tire and get millions and millions of streams. And I feel that maybe luxury brands in the old days, just like composers and just like artists and just like actors, we're all competing amongst themselves. And now we're competing in a world of digital noise. Whereas, back in the days, I would maybe compete with another pianist. Now I'm competing with videos about Ukraine, and I'm political videos and funny TikTok moments, and that is your competition these days. I find that incredibly difficult to deal with. So I feel we live in an industry where brands and artists, it doesn't matter who does what, it matters what you do. So to say it in the other way around, it matters what you do and not who does it. And I think this is also a message for luxury brands to actually focus on not who they are as much, but focus on more what they do and what impact they make. And I think luxury is about storytelling. It's about experiences. As often I also hear in your podcast, people talk about the value of experiences. And in a sense, is also as a luxury brand, if you can create valuable experiences rather than only rely on your history, it's a very, very important message. And I feel often that luxury brands say we want to find new audiences. Maybe those new audiences, don't always per se feel related to the historic message of the brand. We look at watch brands, we look at Louis Vuitton, we look at, brands that carry so much weight in this industry, but is maybe appreciated to some extent by the younger generation, but certain authenticity and certain stories don't really matter anymore. So as a brand, we cannot rely anymore, or as a luxury industry, I feel you cannot rely anymore on solely reputation. You have to rely on what is the experiences you bring to your audience. And for that, I feel that music is a great part of that, because it is part of the experience, and it's part of finding a new audience that also comes onto the path of the brand, and through music, that's a really can be a really important side journey.
I so much agree with you on the very idea of reframing competition. Not long ago, watch brands would compete with other watch brands. Accessory brands will compete with other accessory, fashion brands, etc. But now, as you just said, you compete with a TikToker in some remote place of Earth. So to cut through this digital noise, and not just brands, professionals like ourselves as well, every individual, that's so important to reframe who your competitors are. And the more you dig into it, the more you realize that the level of competition has increased, that is increasing on a daily basis.
It increases all the time, and it becomes noisier and noisier. And it's in the end, it's like swiping technologies caused the decay of our concentration span. So thank you, Steve Jobs. People, as we say, you need to put everything in the first 5 seconds. And there is all these incredible courses out there, about how to be successful on social media. and you know, how emerging technologies are also fading. We see it with we see it with so many Google Glass, for instance, technologies that come and go. And I think it's so difficult for luxury brands nowadays to be like, what do we actually focus on? On whom do we focus? And um, we see large department stores at Oxford Street that are all disappearing, like, you know, like snow in the sun. And we see that online shopping is getting bigger and bigger, and true value of salesmanship is being lost. And this is I feel is a terrible thing, that even as a store like Harrods, which is so proud about customer service and a knowledgeable staff who have all passion for a product and give the shopper a true experience, that people just don't have time anymore, and they're so rushed through life. And luxury brands are here. We are here to give you the experience, but you don't have time to experience it. It's very, very, very difficult. And I personally, I'm not sitting here to say I have the solution, because I honestly don't. I do feel very passionate about creating dialogue. So how my music is composed is that it generates a form of musical dialogue, and that is represented within the music itself. So doing a project, for instance, for together with Formula One, it's about recording the car and the noises of this car, and really going deep in saying, what is the sounds that play in this particular ambiance, and creating a musical instrument out of the car, and then having a dialogue between the piano and the car. And when I have a film, a score that I play to, it is having a dialogue with the film score. And kind of this organic interaction I find so important. So as a luxury brand, it's also about how can we form dialogue. I think if you're a bank and you're a relationships manager, it's also how can we form dialogue. And I think brands have so much relied on generic forms of communication. We look at it as your bank sending you these brochures that are printed with their standardized approach. With, you know, it's like I don't think this is what people want anymore. They finally want to have a dialogue and someone to ring them and say, hey, why don't you come over for a cup of tea and let's discuss this? And I think this is what I hope the luxury industry is going to be about more and more, where in fact is you really, really go into dialogue with someone. And I do the same thing today here. I have some wonderful people over who I did an event for a Small World. And Small World is a very exclusive social media platform. And they're coming back here to the house to listen to the sound speakers. And it's not about them buying, it's about creating a conversation about music, and for them to experience music at a completely different level, and for them to really listen to music again, and even music that they know, but in a redefined way. So these wonderful Steinway speakers, they feel like you're looking at sound through a microscope. So you see this endless texture. It's almost like you're putting a microscope on a Louis Vuitton bag and you see the actual letter movements, and it you know, the consistency of the fabric, and you know, the way how the stitching is done. I think maybe this is what I would want to focus on as a luxury brand, to take someone to see your stitching and see the microscopic workings. I feel like people like Jacob & Co. Watch brand, who are creating these incredible, fully transparent dome watches, how they put these videos together is just that they really show the inner workings in saying, how far do you go in shaping this ornament? You know, how much time goes into the actual, you know, the filing of the gold. and the setting of the stones, and you see all this happening, and I'm like, this is someone who really breathes luxury and understands, you know, the journey of it. And for people to feel like, oh my God, there is an artisan who, and this is the art into, maybe finally answering your question, how does the art come into the luxury industry? In this watchmaking videos of Jacob and Co, they really fully understand,
Yeah.
like, what does art do in the luxury industry. And with music, I'm trying to do this thing. It's about experiencing things and creating memorable experiences. And for people to say, I had one compliment after one of the events that I did here with the Steinway system. They said, people will never forget how Vincent made them feel. And I thought that was the biggest compliment I probably have ever received for anything that I've done in this world. And that, I feel, is going truly to the experience. And it doesn't matter what you sell, and it doesn't matter about the numbers, and it doesn't matter how much money you make, because you know that that experience will last. And that's literally, for me, everything that matters.
Yeah, that reminds me of a conversation I had with Guido Terreni, who at the time was leading the Bulgari watch division. Now he's at the head of Parmigiani. And he told me exactly the same thing. In watchmaking, the experience must be built around the product, because the product is so unique, such a product of the finest intellectual human activities that you cannot escape it. You cannot create something. You must focus on that and give the experience, not just the product, but the experience. And I must travel to Zurich and listen to this incredible system myself, because now I'm very intrigued.
It's something that you've never heard before. And I sometimes put on Billie Jean from Michael Jackson, which, of course, the track that, well, I believe basically everyone knows. And when they stand here and they hear this track and they hear this incredible snare and kick, and this sound of Michael's voice that goes from left to right, in a speaker is at such a high definition sound, and it's so incredibly vibrant and clear that, oh my goodness, we've never heard music like this before, and that's amazing. And I remember also, when it comes to experiences, I approached Harrods quite recently about a dream that I had. And it was a dream that I woke up in rainy London, and it was very late, and I entered Harrods through a time machine. So there was literally going entirely back in time, and it was the old tills and the sounds of it, and it was the manufacturing of the old ways of creating the candy, and the smell of the caramel and stuff as people were steering the caramel. And it was a dream that I had. And I was like, wow, we live in such a fast time, and we forget about the old days and kind of the history of things. And I was like, sometimes we need to go back into a time machine and experience actually all the things that we take for granted now, but have all this innovation behind it, but factually experience it. And I think if people would go back into a time machine and they would experience luxury through a time machine, they would look at luxury entirely differently, because they would really feel the product and become the product and see the product. And that's what I feel with my music. It's just, in instances, you become.
I sense, because I've been doing this long enough, that our viewers and listeners will want to know more about you after this inspiring conversation. Where can they find you?
There is a website, vincentcorver.com, which has the videos and also the brands that I've worked with and the films that are there. And it's always very wonderful to hear people say, I was on your website and I saw this music that you created for this brand, and I understand why you made this music for this brand and why it's fitting. And this is wonderful. And sometimes I also have people that say, I've heard your music, but I never knew it was you. And this is also wonderful. And of course, there's Instagram, which for me is still a means of communication, reaching out to people, and also at Vincent Corver, where people can kind of find more of the the weekly updates, so to speak.
Vincent Corver, thank you for being on Lux and Friends.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed our conversation.
Carlo Peñator, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, and I hope to speak to you soon.
Likewise.